I do not know if these words belong to me, or to the echo of another life I was never supposed to remember, but tonight the journal arrived. It was slipped under my apartment door without a note, without a sound, as if the city itself coughed it up and abandoned it at my feet. I might have ignored it, but the cover was wrong. Burnt leather that smelled of ash, etched with a map that kept shifting when my eyes lingered too long. I touched it and swore I felt a pulse. My name was written inside. Not my handwriting, but my name, sprawled across the first page with a violence that made my chest tighten. Elias Rourke, it said, but beneath, in smaller letters trembling as though the ink itself had shivered, were the words, "You were never meant to leave the North Gate." I read the line 3 times, then slammed the book shut, my throat dry. There was no North Gate here, not in this city, not in any place I had ever lived. But the unease it struck in me was real, like a memory of a house fire I had never survived, or the phantom scent of earth after rain in a country I had never walked. I kept the journal on the table while the night grew louder outside. The traffic, the laughter from bars, the sirens slicing the dark, but none of it reached me. I opened the book again, and the next entry bled across the page as if it had been waiting for my return. The handwriting was different now, calmer, elegant, though each word seemed carved with intent. If you are reading this, the others have failed. The map will burn again, and you must not follow it. Remember the cartographer lies. The cartographer. The word froze in my mind. A strange blend of menace and reverence clung to it. I wanted to laugh at myself, dismiss it as an elaborate prank, but the letters pressed against my skin like heat. Then, from nowhere, a drop of ash fell onto the page, though there was no fire, no smoke. I brushed it away, but it left a smear, and beneath that smear a drawing revealed itself. Lines and curves forming a city that was not my own, though its skyline mirrored mine like a half-remembered dream. Bridges where none existed, towers out of proportion, a gate larger than any cathedral. The North Gate. My pulse quickened. The walls around me suddenly felt wrong, as though my apartment had been rebuilt slightly askew, angled by someone who had never seen it but tried to imitate it from memory. I needed air. I carried the journal outside, the night damp with the promise of rain. The streets stretched ordinary and safe, but I saw shadows where none should fall. A man in a heavy coat stood at the corner, unmoving, his face hidden, his posture angled toward me. When I looked again, he was gone. I flipped through the pages as I walked, each one filled with fragmented notes. Do not trust the woman with the silver eyes. The bridge collapses on the 3rd step. The key is not a key, but a name. Each line sounded insane, but each cut deeper into me, like warnings I should have always known. At the last page, the ink was fresh, still glistening. I swear it appeared as I read it, stroke by stroke, as if written from elsewhere in real time. He is watching you right now. Do not go back inside. My breath locked. I turned slowly, every muscle stiff, and there, across the street, under the dull orange glow of a street lamp, stood the man in the heavy coat again. This time he raised a hand, not in greeting, not in threat, but in recognition, as if we had done this before in some other version of this night. My journal slipped from my grasp, landing open on the pavement. The map shifted violently, the lines warping, the North Gate glowing faintly like a wound in the paper. The man stepped forward and the light above him flickered, plunging half the street into darkness. I wanted to run, but something inside whispered that I had already done so once, and it had not saved me. His voice carried across the night, low, steady, and impossibly certain. "Elias," he said, though I had never seen his face. "You left the wrong world behind." The morning after discovering the map, I could not stop tracing its lines with my finger, the paper trembling under my touch as if it resisted being held in this reality. I barely slept, and when the sunlight poured across my desk, it only deepened the contrast of the strange symbols etched into the margins. They were not languages I recognized, not alphabets of any civilization I had studied, and yet I understood them in some half-forgotten way, as though they were words I had once known before being born here. I folded the journal and placed it into my satchel, locking the door of my small apartment behind me, but the world outside already looked changed. The narrow streets of my neighborhood shimmered with a slight distortion, as though the edges of buildings were wavering, and every face that passed me on the sidewalk seemed faintly wrong, a fraction too blurred. I shook my head, trying to clear the hallucination, but it lingered. By the time I reached the archives where I worked, my hands were slick with sweat and my nerves burned like exposed wires. Inside, my supervisor was waiting. She was a severe woman named Dr. Holloway, who never allowed lateness or excuses. "You look ill," she said, her eyes narrowing. "Rough night." I muttered something about insomnia, but she did not look convinced. Instead, she tapped a stack of folders onto my desk and said, "The funding board is reviewing our work this week. I expect all catalogs in perfect order. No distractions." Her voice had a finality that left no room for protest, but I felt my heart lurch as I slid the folders aside. The journal, hidden within my satchel, pulsed against my leg like a second heartbeat, louder than her words, louder than the bustle of the archives. When the building emptied for lunch, I locked myself into a storage room, spread the journal on the table, and forced myself to examine it more closely. This time, as my eyes moved over the ink, I felt a surge of vertigo and then clarity. The symbols unfolded, revealing not mere scribbles but coordinates, places marked across a world map that was not ours. Continents stretched in unfamiliar shapes, oceans cut by jagged seams. One mark glowed faintly. Yes, glowed, though no source of light touched it. My breath hitched. It corresponded to a location not far from the city, deep within the industrial docks. Before I could write anything down, the door rattled. A voice called my name. Someone had followed. I shoved the journal into my bag, opened the door, and found one of my colleagues, Nathan, staring at me. His eyes flickered downward to the satchel and then back to mine, suspicion shadowing his face. "You've been acting strange," he said quietly, "and people are noticing. What are you hiding?" I tried to brush it off, but his expression only darkened. "I'm warning you," he muttered. "If you're involved in something illegal, don't drag me down with you." He stalked away, leaving me trembling. That evening, I followed the coordinates to the docks. The air reeked of salt and rust, ships groaning against their moorings, the water black beneath the moon. The journal's map guided me to a forgotten warehouse, its windows shattered, the doors chained. Yet when I touched the rusted lock, it fell away as if it had never been solid, dissolving into dust. I froze, staring at the remains in my palm. Inside, the warehouse was filled with strange machinery, enormous wheels, twisted frames of steel, and scraps of parchment pinned to the walls. Some were exact copies of the journal's pages. Others were worse, sketches of people I recognized, faces of strangers who had passed me earlier in the street, drawn with exquisite detail. I stepped closer and nearly screamed. Among the sketches was my own face, drawn in dark ink, but scarred across the cheek with a mark I had never borne. Beneath it a single line of text read, "The Witness." My pulse pounded as I stumbled backward. The journal fell open on the ground, and the pages flipped by themselves, halting on a passage I had not yet read. The words rearranged into clarity. "They know you have it. They will come." A clatter erupted behind me. Figures emerged from the shadows, 3 men in heavy coats, their eyes reflecting the dim light unnaturally. They spoke in unison, a terrible harmony. "Return what does not belong." My body locked with fear. "I don't know what this is," I stammered, clutching the journal, but it found me. I didn't steal it. Their heads tilted in perfect synchronicity. "Every reality protects itself. Yours is not strong enough. You must choose, surrender or vanish." I turned and bolted for the exit, their footsteps pounding after me. The warehouse seemed to shift, its walls bending, corridors stretching impossibly long. I ran until my lungs tore with pain, until the night air hit me like fire. When I looked back, the warehouse was gone, replaced by an empty lot filled only with weeds. My satchel was heavier than before. I reached inside and felt not just the journal but something else, a fragment of stone, smooth and cold, etched with the same markings as the map. Back home I locked every window and sat on the floor, staring at the fragment. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. "You cannot run forever, witness." My hand shook as I dropped the phone, my mind spinning. Who were they? How had they drawn my face before I had ever opened the journal? And what did they mean by calling me the witness? As dawn approached, one thing became clear. This was not just an artifact. It was a key, and now I was being hunted for holding it. I did not leave my apartment for 2 days. Curtains drawn, lights dim, the journal and the stone fragment never leaving my sight. I lived like a fugitive in my own home. Every creak of the floorboards above, every rumble of a passing truck set my nerves on edge, as though the warehouse figures might come bursting through the walls at any moment. Sleep brought no relief. Dreams were flooded with alternate versions of myself, some scarred like the sketch I had seen, some unrecognizable, all whispering warnings I could never remember upon waking. By the 3rd morning, I had decided to destroy the journal, burn it, rip it, do anything to free myself. But when I held a match to its pages, the flame bent backward, curling away as though repelled by an unseen wind. The fire died before it touched the ink. My last chance to rid myself of the burden dissolved in smoke. I was on the verge of panic when the knock came. 3 sharp raps on my door, urgent but controlled. I froze, not daring to breathe. Another series of knocks followed, and then a voice. "I know what you found. If you want answers, let me in." The voice was female, calm but edged with steel. My heart hammered against my ribs. It could be a trap, another attempt by those who hunted me, but something in the tone cut through my terror. Against reason, I unlatched the door. The woman who entered was young, perhaps mid-30s, her dark hair tied back in a braid, her coat heavy and weather-worn. Her eyes scanned my apartment in a single sweep before locking onto the journal on the table. "So it's true," she whispered. She extended her hand. "My name is Alara. I've been looking for that journal for a long time." I stepped back instinctively, clutching the satchel to my chest. "You're not taking it," I said, voice trembling. She raised both hands slowly, a gesture of peace. "I don't want to steal it. I want to help you survive it. Because whether you know it or not, you've been marked. Once the journal chooses someone, they become a witness. And witnesses don't usually last long." The word echoed in my mind. Witness. The same title beneath my sketch in the warehouse. "Why me?" I demanded. Alara's gaze softened, though sadness lingered behind her expression. "Because in another reality, you've already lived through this. You survived something no one else did. That knowledge imprinted across the divides, and now the journal seeks you in every version of the world. But survival comes with a price." She sat at my table uninvited, pulling a small bundle from her coat. Inside was another fragment of stone, nearly identical to mine, but etched with a different pattern. "I found this years ago," she explained. "I thought it was just debris until I traced it back to a journal like yours. They're all connected, scattered across realities. Pieces of a larger design we still don't understand." I studied her, torn between distrust and desperate hope. "And the men in the warehouse? Who were they?" Alara's jaw tightened. "They're not men. They're enforcers, constructs of the fractures between worlds. Their job is to erase anomalies before they destabilize everything. To them, you are an anomaly. So am I." The air seemed to thin as her words settled over me. My fear morphed into something sharper, edged with anger. "Then what do we do? Keep running until they catch us?" Alara shook her head. "We don't run. We uncover the truth before they erase us. And to do that, we follow where the journal leads." Reluctantly, I handed her the stone fragment from my satchel. She placed it beside hers, and together they clicked with a faint hum, glowing at the seams. The journal's pages fluttered open of their own accord, revealing a new map, this one marked with a destination deep in the mountains far north of the city. That night, we boarded a train under false names, leaving behind everything familiar. The journey was long and silent, the rhythm of the wheels a fragile shield against the storm in my head. Alara sat across from me, her eyes always on the window, scanning reflections as if expecting our pursuers to appear in the glass. I wanted to ask her more, who she really was, how she had survived this long, but exhaustion dragged me into uneasy sleep. I woke to find her shaking my shoulder, urgency in her whisper. "Don't move suddenly. Look to your left." My gaze slid toward the aisle. A man in a long coat sat 2 rows back, his face obscured by shadow, but I recognized the shimmer in his eyes. An enforcer. He was watching us. Alara squeezed my arm. "We get off at the next stop," she murmured. "If we stay, we're trapped." My pulse thundered as the train screeched into a small mountain station. We slipped out into the icy air, snow crunching beneath our boots. But when I looked back through the train windows, the man was already gone. My stomach dropped. "He's off," I whispered. "He's following." The village was nearly deserted, lights flickering behind shuttered windows, the streets buried in drifts of snow. Alara led me into an abandoned chapel at the edge of town, its stained glass fractured, its pews coated in frost. There she spread both stone fragments across the journal's open pages. The glow intensified, and lines of text appeared in the margins, curling across the parchment like living ink. I leaned closer, my breath fogging the page. The words rearranged into a sentence that stole my breath. "The witness must remember what was forgotten." Alara frowned. "Do you understand what it means?" I shook my head, though a fragment of memory stirred deep inside, like a whisper beneath water. A child's voice calling my name. A fire raging across a city I had never seen. The sensation of running through smoke with a journal clutched to my chest. I staggered back, clutching my temples. I've seen this before," I gasped. "Not here. Not in this life." Alara's eyes widened. "Then it's starting. The journal is unlocking your memories from another reality. That's the key, don't you see? You already hold the answers. We just need to unlock them fully before the enforcers silence you." Before I could respond, the chapel doors slammed open, the wind howling inside. Figures stepped through, their movements perfectly synchronized, eyes glinting with that unnatural reflection. 3 enforcers, the same as before, their voices blending into a dreadful chord. "The witness has remembered. Termination required." Alara grabbed my hand and dragged me behind the altar as the journal's glow flared, casting impossible shadows across the frozen pews. The stone fragments lifted into the air, vibrating with a frequency that rattled my teeth. The enforcers advanced, each step echoing like thunder. Alara's grip tightened. "You have to choose now," she hissed. "Either you face them, or we both die here." The chapel quaked as though the mountain itself had turned against us. Shards of colored glass fell from the windows, scattering like frozen rain across the floor. The journal levitated above the altar now, its pages flipping violently, the 2 stone fragments orbiting it in a blur of light. The enforcers moved forward in unison, their voices splitting the air with an eerie chant that rattled my bones. Alara shoved me against the wall. "Focus on the journal," she shouted over the roar. "It's reacting to you. Use it before they sever the link." But how could I use something I didn't understand? My hands trembled as I stretched toward the glow. The moment my fingertips brushed the edge of the journal, pain ripped through me, searing every nerve. I screamed and stumbled back. Images cascaded into my vision. Burning cities, oceans made of glass, endless fields of bones, a dozen versions of myself fleeing through fractured landscapes. Each image ended the same way, the enforcers closing in, blotting out everything. "They're everywhere," I gasped. "In every world, they always find me." "That's because you keep running." Alara snapped, her eyes fierce. "Stop running, witness. Stand." Her defiance bought us seconds, but only seconds. One of the enforcers raised its hand, and the wood of the pews groaned as if strangled. Splinters erupted, forming jagged spears that launched toward us. Alara pulled me down just in time. The spikes impaled the wall where our heads had been. She rolled across the floor, pulling a knife from her coat. Not steel, but some black crystalline blade that hummed like a tuning fork. She slashed at the nearest enforcer. The blade met its arm, and for the first time, I heard one of them hiss in pain. A jagged scar of light burned across its form. But there were 3. While Alara fought one, the other 2 advanced on me. Their faces shifted in and out of focus, sometimes human, sometimes blank masks of light. They spoke together. "The witness destabilizes. Terminate to restore equilibrium." I backed against the altar, the journal's glow now so bright it was blinding. The words on its pages reshaped themselves in frantic motion, forming symbols I couldn't read yet felt in my bones. They pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat, demanding something, demanding choice. And then I remembered. Not everything, just enough. A memory buried deep, clawing its way into the present, standing on a cliff of black stone in another reality. Alara at my side, but older, scarred, her voice hoarse as she whispered, "You chose wrong last time. Don't repeat it." The fragments of memory hit me with a wave of nausea. I staggered, gripping the altar, Another me had been here before. Another me had failed. Stop hesitating. Alara's cry cut through my paralysis. She drove the crystalline blade into her opponent's chest, pinning it momentarily to the floor, but the effort left her exposed. Another enforcer raised its arm toward her, energy gathering in its palm like a storm. Instinct overrode fear. I seized the journal. The moment my hands wrapped around it, the chapel disappeared. I stood in a vast plain of mirrors stretching into eternity. Each mirror reflected a different version of myself. A soldier with blood on his armor, a scholar hunched over tomes, a vagabond in rags, a corpse lying still. Thousands of me, all staring back. Some screamed warnings I couldn't hear. Others pressed their hands against the glass as though begging me to release them. A voice boomed across the infinite expanse. Choose. The mirrors began to shatter, one by one, collapsing into darkness. I ran through the fragments, my feet cutting on shards that bled light instead of blood. Somewhere in the chaos, I heard Alara's real voice, distant and fading. Come back. Don't lose yourself in it. I stopped before a mirror that showed me holding the journal, but unlike now, I was not afraid. That version of me was resolute, scarred but unbroken. He lifted the journal like a weapon, and the enforcers around him disintegrated into dust. His eyes locked on mine. For a heartbeat, we were one. When I blinked, I was back in the chapel. The journal's glow now radiated outward like a shield. The two enforcers advancing on me recoiled, their forms flickering. My hands no longer trembled. For the first time, I understood. The journal was not a burden. It was a weapon forged from memory itself. But power always demands cost. The journal's pages blackened at the edges as I poured myself into it, as though burning away my life force to fuel its strength. I aimed it at the enforcers, and a wave of fractured light burst forth, slicing through them. Their forms unraveled into motes of ash. Silence fell. I collapsed to my knees, gasping. My body felt hollow, weaker than before. Alara knelt beside me, clutching my shoulders. Her face was pale with shock, but her eyes burned with something else, fear, and maybe awe. You shouldn't have been able to do that, she whispered. No witness ever has. Before I could answer, the third enforcer, wounded but not destroyed, rose from the floor. Its body glitched in and out of existence, half light, half shadow. It staggered toward us, voice distorted, balance broken, collapse imminent. The chapel shook violently, cracks splitting the walls. Snow blasted through broken windows, and beyond them I saw the sky tearing open, seams of reality splitting to reveal impossible landscapes, an ocean of fire, a forest of glass, a city suspended upside down. The journal pulsed frantically in my hands, almost too hot to hold. Alara's grip on me tightened. It's starting. The collapse between worlds. If we don't fix this, none of the realities will survive. The enforcer lunged again, its body flickering with violent energy. I raised the journal, but its pages were almost consumed, the words dissolving into ash. The weapon was burning itself out. I didn't know if I had enough left in me for one more strike. The ground buckled beneath us, the altar splitting in two. Snow and debris cascaded down. Alara pulled me toward the back of the chapel, shouting above the chaos. We have to run. If the collapse spreads, this world will tear apart. But I froze. My vision blurred as another fragment of memory sliced through me. An image of myself in another world, clutching the same journal, choosing to flee. Behind him, everything collapsed. Millions of lives erased because he ran. Because I ran. Not again. I turned back toward the enforcer, journal blazing in my grip though it seared my skin. Alara screamed my name, but I didn't move. This was the moment. The one where everything would either break or hold. The enforcer opened its mouth in a scream of static, and I answered with a roar of my own, thrusting the journal forward. And the world shattered. The shards of the chapel were gone. In their place stretched a void that seemed infinite, a twilight expanse littered with fragments of countless worlds. I floated on debris, the journal still clutched to my chest, its glow dimmed but alive, pulsing in sync with my heartbeat. Alara hovered nearby, her face pale but determined, her hand gripping mine with a strength that anchored me to this reality, however tenuous. Before us stood the final enforcer, its form a chaotic amalgam of every world it had consumed. Its eyes were endless pits, reflecting not only fear but all the worlds it had destroyed. Its voice reverberated in the void. Witness, your defiance ends now. One choice remains. Surrender the journal, or witness the collapse of everything you know. I trembled, feeling the weight of countless realities pressing down on me. The journal's pages fluttered weakly, as if pleading. I could hear faint whispers, millions of voices from lives that might have been, echoing inside my skull. Every option was a trap. Every hesitation, a death sentence for worlds I had never even seen. Alera's voice cut through the storm in my mind. Do it, witness. You have the power. The journal isn't just a weapon, it's a key. You decide which reality survives. But the enforcer was closer now, its presence warping the air, distorting the remnants of space. My hands shook violently. I thought of the countless me's I had seen in the mirrors, the ones who ran and failed. I refused to repeat their mistakes. I opened the journal fully, letting its light flood outward. The enforcer recoiled, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in its endless eyes. Pages spun faster, letters coalescing into shapes, symbols I had never learned but somehow understood. They told a story of balance, of destruction and creation intertwined, a map of the multiverse itself. I felt a connection, not just to this world, but to all the realities, all the versions of myself, all the lives hanging in the balance. The enforcer screamed, a sound like cracking ice over molten fire. It lunged, but I raised the journal, letting it feed on my resolve, my memories, my fear, my hope. Light exploded outward. I felt myself tearing apart and reassembling simultaneously. The void shuddered violently. I glimpsed worlds folding into one another, then separating, then folding again. Every step, every choice, every thought I had ever made rippled through the fabric of existence. The enforcer roared in fury, advancing faster than thought, but I was faster. I wove through the collapsing fragments, guiding the journal, forcing it to amplify its energy. It was no longer my weapon. It had become an extension of my will. My fear burned away, leaving clarity. One decision remained. Save myself, save one reality, or risk everything for all of them. I chose all. The journal flared like a star-gone supernova. The enforcer screamed as it was drawn into the brilliance. Every world it had claimed recoiling, pulling back, repairing itself. The void trembled, then stilled. When the light finally dimmed, I floated in a strange silence. The fragments of the chapel drifted around me, intact yet unfamiliar, stitched together from pieces of countless realities. Alera landed beside me, gasping. You did it, she whispered, her eyes wide. All of them, they survived. I sank to my knees, exhausted, every nerve raw. The journal lay open, pages quivering, but alive. It was empty, yet full, as though it had rewritten itself, recording nothing and everything simultaneously. My body ached, my mind screamed with the weight of all those lives, all those worlds, but a strange calm settled over me. I had made the impossible choice, and somehow it had worked. A whisper reached me, faint but clear, almost tender. The balance is restored for now. I recognized it immediately. Not the enforcer, not Alera, not me, but the voice of every me who had lived and failed, thanking the one who had finally chosen correctly. Alera helped me stand. We should leave, she said, glancing at the horizon where the fragments of shattered worlds hung like suspended stars. But remember, witness, even now, some forces will never sleep. They will return. And next time, it won't be just a test. It will be war. I nodded, staring at the journal. Its pages were blank, yet I knew the truth of every choice, every failure, every reality it had touched. The weight of it was unbearable, but I had survived. For now, as we walked forward, the void dissolving into a semblance of reality, I realized that victory was never simple. It came at a cost. Every reality that survived bore a mark of what had happened here. Every life carried a shadow of the enforcer's threat, and I, the witness, would carry the memories of all of them forever. A sudden tremor passed through the ground, small, almost imperceptible. I froze. Alera tensed beside me. The journal's glow pulsed faintly. Somewhere, in the multiverse beyond comprehension, something had stirred. A reminder that even victory was temporary, that the collapse was never truly over. And yet, for the first time in countless lifetimes, I felt hope. Not blind hope, not naive hope, but the hard, trembling hope of someone who had faced the impossible and survived. I looked at Alara, and she smiled faintly, the first genuine smile I had seen from her since this nightmare began. "We'll be ready," she said quietly. "Together." I nodded, gripping the journal tighter. Whatever came next, whatever forces awaited us across the shifting realities, we would face them. And we would not run. The void around us pulsed, reshaping, reforming, alive with potential. The collapse had ended, for now. But the journey was far from over. The void had receded, leaving a patchwork reality stitched from fragments of countless worlds. I stood at the edge of what I thought was solid ground, though it wavered beneath my feet, reminding me that the multiverse was still fragile, still raw. The journal, once a beacon of chaos and power, now lay dormant in my hands, its pages blank yet alive with unseen histories. Every heartbeat echoed like a distant drumbeat across worlds I could no longer fully comprehend. Alara remained close, her hand brushing mine occasionally, anchoring me to the present. We walked through the remnants of the chapel, its walls a mosaic of memories, of failed and surviving realities intertwined. The air was heavy with a quiet tension, as if the universe itself exhaled for the first time after a long, perilous breath. I tried to reconcile what had happened. The enforcer was gone, dissolved into the light of the journal, yet I could not shake the feeling that it was not truly defeated. Somewhere, across the expanse of existence, shadows lingered, whispering promises of return. The weight of those lives I had saved pressed on me, a gravity both comforting and suffocating. I had been witness to so much, yet I felt more like a guardian burdened by knowledge too vast to share. "Alara," I said quietly, "do you think it's over?" My voice sounded strange, thin, almost foreign in the calm of this patchwork reality. She looked at me, her eyes reflecting fragments of stars and shattered worlds. "Over? Perhaps for now. But the multiverse doesn't work in absolutes. Every choice we made, every life we saved, left ripples. Some will grow into storms we cannot predict." Her words were both a warning and a comfort. I realized then that victory had a price, awareness. We could never return to ignorance, could never be whole in the way we had been before the journals found us. Yet, there was a strange beauty in this fragility. We had seen the vastness, the infinite possibilities, and emerged with a measure of control, however small. The journal pulsed faintly, as though responding to our thoughts. I opened it, half expecting it to be blank again, but this time symbols shimmered faintly across the pages, echoes of realities we had touched, memories we had salvaged. I did not understand them fully, yet I felt their meaning in the marrow of my bones. The journal had changed, just as I had, no longer a mere tool or weapon, but a record of choices, of balance, of the delicate dance between creation and destruction. We stepped outside, into a sky that was neither fully day nor night, the horizon a blend of hues borrowed from worlds long lost and worlds reborn. The wind carried a strange scent, a mixture of rain, ash, and something undefinably sweet, like a memory I had never lived but somehow recognized. "Alara," I whispered, "what now? We can't stay here forever. The journal, it calls to so many, and yet we alone know its truth." She smiled faintly, a smile tinged with exhaustion and something harder to name, resolve. "We survive. We learn. And we prepare. We carry the weight. Yes, but also the hope. The multiverse will keep turning, with or without us. And now, perhaps, it will turn a little more kindly." I nodded, though doubt lingered like shadows along the edges of perception. I thought of the versions of myself I had seen, some triumphant, some broken, all witnesses to similar choices. I realized that I carried their echoes, their triumphs and failures woven into my own consciousness. I was not alone, and yet I was singular, a culmination of infinite possibilities. Time, if it could still be measured, moved strangely. Days blurred into nights, nights into moments of reflection. We explored the remnants of the chapel, piecing together shards of reality, documenting what could be saved, what must be left to drift. Every fragment we touched responded differently. Some harmonized, some resisted, some shimmered with uncertainty. It was an endless puzzle, a testament to the fragility and resilience of existence. One evening, as we sat atop a ridge formed from memories and dust, the journal finally stilled. I held it in my lap, feeling its warmth and weight. "Do you think anyone else will come looking for it?" I asked, my voice low, wary. "Perhaps," Alara replied, her gaze fixed on the horizon where shadows danced. "But now it will be different. Those who seek it will find not just power, but responsibility. They will learn, as you did, that the journal is alive in ways they cannot control. And perhaps they will be ready." A silence followed, heavy and contemplative, yet not oppressive. I felt the enormity of all we had faced, the lives saved, the enforcer's threat, the collapsing realities, and understood that this was both an ending and a beginning. Every choice had shaped the multiverse, but the story was far from complete. It would continue, as it always had, in ways we could not yet foresee. Alara leaned against me, a quiet reassurance, a tether to the present. "We survived," she said softly. "That alone is worth everything." I closed my eyes, letting the wind wash over me, carrying with it the echoes of all we had seen, all we had lost, all we had saved. I felt the journal's pulse slow, a heartbeat now in sync with my own, and understood that we had altered the course of countless lives, not through power alone, but through choice, through courage, through the impossible act of believing in hope when all seemed lost. And as the horizon shimmered, fracturing and recombining in a quiet symphony of possibilities, I realized that being witness was not about control, nor victory, nor defeat. It was about awareness, about carrying the weight of infinite realities and moving forward regardless, shaping the world in ways both subtle and profound. The journal rested in my hands, quiet now, but alive. And I knew that we, Alara, I, and all the echoes of the multiverse we had touched, would endure. That even as shadows returned, as challenges arose, as the unknown stretched endlessly before us, we had a foundation, fragile but unbroken, upon which to stand. And so we walked onward, through a world stitched from fragments, through a reality tempered by loss and hope, carrying within us the knowledge that even in the face of infinite uncertainty, we had survived, and in surviving, we had glimpsed the impossible truth, that hope, however tenuous, is always worth the risk. The wind whispered around us, carrying a faint, unearthly melody, and for the first time in countless lifetimes, I felt not fear, not doubt, but the quiet, trembling strength of someone who had faced everything and endured. The multiverse was watching, listening, waiting, and we would be ready.